Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural laws so that we might restore our American Republic. The Creator God of the Bible has been with our nation from the beginning. Those first settlers came not only for freedom to worship the God of their salvation, but to propagate the gospel in this new land. Our founding fathers did much to ensure the teachings of the Bible would be the foundation of our education system. In 1777, Congress approved the printing of America's first English language Bible for use in the school system. And in 1809, America's first Bible Society was formed by Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. In 1816, the first National Bible Society was established by national leaders, including those who signed the U.S. Constitution and Supreme Court justices. Several Bible societies were begun by them, and even large purchases of Bibles were made by them. We can look back to our war for independence and see the providence of God. And even the Easter miracle we experienced this past Sunday shows that God is still for us. We can certainly look at the massive amounts of weaponry and the brilliant plans of our generals. We can also see the incredible bravery of our troops and even the bravery of the injured airmen. But you can't deny that almost anything could have brought catastrophe to the mission, but nothing did. Thanks be to the one true God. Well, with that, good morning, Mike Levine.
Good morning, Chuck. Been an interesting morning so far.
Yes, it has. We've
It's
been
going to be a
struggling.
really interesting day, Chuck.
For sure, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
for our viewers, we have been working on some sound problems. It does sound like we're okay right now. So we're kind of looking at some news in the uh, regard to AI this morning. Mike, you want to just kind of start us with maybe a review of SB 484, or do we want to talk about what's happening right now in what was it, Fort Meade?
Fort Meade, yes, which is in Polk County, small town, 5,300 um, residents in Fort Meade, Florida, in Polk County. And today, probably as we speak, the city council is is in a hearing with the intent of either approving or denying a data center construction in Fort Meade, Florida, that would be 1,300 acres of land for a 4.4 million square foot building, which means the building takes up 100 acres all by itself. Okay, so now, and that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So this is what Senate Bill 484 was addressing. And keep in mind that the application for this land use change was in process before committee weeks began. So this is something that was on the radar of our legislators, probably brought to their attention by city councils and county commissions, and was addressed. And of course, this is a very complex subject. If you go back to our analysis of Senate Bill 484, it goes into all of the specifications of when would it be okay to approve a data center. And that's what we're talking about today, Chuck. So right now, as we speak, probably, or it could be this evening, but I think it's now, the city of Fort Meade is having a hearing with lots of public outrage against the approval of this data center, which also brings to bear the provisions of Senate Bill 484, which passed both the Florida House and the Florida Senate. And my understanding is that it's waiting to be signed into law by the governor. So, that brings another whole element to it. So you have any questions or concerns about what I said so far, Chuck?
No, I think you've mentioned pretty much the facility and what's going on there. The project estimated cost is $2.6 billion, and what the hopes are is that it would bring hundreds of operational jobs and, quite frankly, thousands of construction jobs with significant tax revenue. That's all very, very positive, but that doesn't necessarily speak to the individual citizens of that community, which they're going to be impacted, I think, significantly, if not severely.
Well, it's interesting that, let's see, let me get this gentleman's name. This guy, Raul Alfonso, actually appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room yesterday and, educated the War Room posse about this hearing. And then a colleague of mine, John Lynn, I saw the broadcast of Raul Alfonso on War Room, and so did John Lynn from Polk County, a grassroots activist, conservative activist in Polk County. So he made a post on Facebook, which actually went through quite a bit of what the land use application included. So John did a really good job, and I want to thank him now for posting what he posted. And then Raul Alfonso brought it to the War Room posse's attention. This hearing was going on today. So let me ask you a question, Chuck. If the state of Florida just banned data centers altogether, and we'll go over the reasons why that's probably a good idea, do you think that it would prevent data centers from being built in the world? And while you answer that question, contemplate the answer to that question, remember that these data centers are all, distributing their product through satellites. So how important is it that we have data centers in Florida? Can't they just put them somewhere else, Chuck?
Well, unfortunately, my guess is that everybody everywhere is saying the same thing, that nobody wants these things in their neighborhood.
Chuck, everybody is not saying the same thing because we're having a hearing this morning about whether we're going to approve one in Fort Meade. Okay, yeah. So everyone is not saying the same thing.
Well, define everyone. I'm talking about the people who live by these data centers. Clearly, there are plenty of people who want to make a lot of money at this, and people who, politicians whose hands might be kind of scratched a little bit, their palms with some money. They might want them as well, but the average citizen simply doesn't want them next to their community. And when you look at Florida, there's a lot of open spaces out there, and most people like even the open spaces. We don't want our forests taken down, and we don't want our agricultural land altered. And and we haven't even started talking about the problem with hurricanes in Florida. I mean, there's literally nowhere you can put a facility like that isn't going to, at some point, be affected by hurricanes. So, my question is, why would anybody want to even put them in Florida?
Well, couldn't that be the reason why the developer wants to put it in Polk County, Florida? Because it's a central county. And by the time most hurricanes reach Polk County, Florida, they're down to tropical storm winds. And of course, commercial construction on a large industrial facility like this can easily be constructed at specifications that would easily survive any storm winds that Polk County gets. So it looks to me like this is another indicator, based on your point, Chuck, that a lot of these data centers are going to be, they're going to prefer being in central or, non-coastal areas. Of course. Why wouldn't they? Why would you put a, $2.6 billion data center on the beach? That just makes no sense at all. Right. I mean, if you want to jump into the fire, do that. Right.
Right. Well, again, my point is not is Florida in general is just a very we're a tourist state. We want people to come here and enjoy Florida, not necessarily huge multi giant acreages of building. Just it's not necessarily what we want people coming to Florida for. But they got to go somewhere, Mike. And what's going to be who is going to have the last say in something like that? The average citizen, or
No. Well, it depends. Depends on if your city council people listen to you or not.
yeah,
Because your city council, because the law, SB 484, unlike so many other things that are going on in Tallahassee, they actually kick this back to the cities and counties. And they say that data centers have to be compliant with local comprehensive land use plans. So, and then it gets into the St. John's Water Management District. Because what's the real, because I'll be honest, Chuck, it's not the size of the structure that bothers me. Okay. It's the land use bothers me. Is this the best use of 1,300 acres of land? That question needs to be answered. I'm telling you for categorically that in my opinion, based on my value proposition, this is definitely not the best use of 1,300 acres of land. I'm in the camp. They can build these things anywhere. Why don't they build them in the North Pole? All they need to do is hit a satellite. That's all they have to do. Hit a satellite. Put this someplace where people don't want to live. And by the way, it doesn't take a lot of human beings to run one of these data centers, point number one. And point number two, the construction jobs will be specialized jobs, and they will bring people from outside of the state to build them. And once that thing's built, they will go away, or they will, fold themselves into the Florida economy in some way. But, the idea, to come out and just naively believe that the people of Fort Meade are going to all get jobs at a data center and build this data center, that is fiction.
Yeah.
Okay. So the economic impact, well, the tax money to the city and the county, I would suggest, and you could go as far as to say the state, will be good for government, but it's not going to be good for the private sector economy necessarily. Okay. Because once that thing's constructed and the construction crews go home, a relatively small number of people are going to run this monstrosity of a building. So for me personally, I'm in the camp. I'll repeat myself. I'd like to see the thing built in some desert, build it in someplace nobody wants to live, and let them hit their satellites from there, Chuck.
Yeah, well, I guess, we kind of both agree, maybe not totally on the rationale, but we both agree that this is probably not good uh, for the people living around this facility. But again, what they're trying to sell is they're saying that this, when it's fully built, it will produce enough electricity to power hundreds of thousands of homes and qualify as a true hyperscale facility for AI and high compute needs. When it says that it has that much power, it doesn't mean it's going to those homes, right? It means it's going to use it itself. Am I wrong here or what?
Oh, yeah. I was about to correct you because if you think that data center is going to create enough power to generate, no, that's how much power the data center requires. Okay. So this is a absolute power generation plant. The demand, the 50 gigawatts, or I don't know the technical terms, but the demand of electricity for this data center is equal to a full-blown power plant that runs thousands of homes. So, and based on the SB 484, they have to build their own power plant. Okay. Which is okay with me. Right. But the big concern is the water, Chuck. Look, the farmers in Florida, the Florida Agriculture Coalition lobbies our legislature continuously to get larger allocations of water assigned to it for the purpose of growing food. And now you're going to approve this data center, which is a huge consumer of water, and you got to take that water away from someone. So if I have to choose between giving water to farmers, ranchers, and giving water to a data center, I'm choosing farmers and ranchers, Chuck.
Yeah, well, I get it, and probably that's a far more a far greater concern for the people in these communities as well. You know, I'm always every time I turn around, I'm hearing that the water company wants to raise their fees, and you know, I'm just astounded at how much water costs down here in Florida.
Let me tell you something. The people that run the Polk County Water Authority, I was in a meeting in the Chamber of Commerce meeting, I don't know, a long time ago. Let's call it 15 years ago. And the people running Polk County Water said, the head guy running the Polk County Water Authority said that water is a commodity and water is required for human life. So why would we make it cheap?
Yeah.
Let me say it again. He's saying that water should not be cheap because it is a limited commodity and life sustaining. So his point of view was, let's raise the price of water through the roof. And if poor people can't afford it, to hell with them. And that was in a public, well, in a chamber meeting, Chuck. So that's the attitude of the price of water from the people running the water authority, or at least back then were running the water authority in Polk County. And now you bring on this data center, which is a huge consumer of water, heavily addressed in SB 484. And you're going to put this monstrosity, complete consumer of all types of utilities into your community at the expense. And you know, and SB 44 attempts to protect ratepayers, both residential and commercial, from spikes in utility bills. But I'm saying to you, Chuck, that when you read through SB 44, it goes back and says to power energy providers that they're prohibited from providing energy services to a consumer knowingly, is the key word, knowingly, that the amount of power that this facility is going to consume is detrimental to other ratepayers. But the key word is knowingly. Now, we already know that the power providers in Florida are not concerned about ratepayers. If they were, they would not be pushing solar. They would be going into fossil fuel energy sources for energy creation and would be pursuing nuclear energy, which is where we're going to wind up, Chuck. We're going to wind up providing power to the United States and the world through nuclear fusion energy plants. That's where we're heading. And if this company was saying, we're going to put together a nuclear, I don't care if it's fission, nuclear fusion or fission. If they're saying we're going to build a nuclear power plant to provide our own energy, well, that would check one of the boxes for me. Okay, great. They're not on the grid. They're producing their own energy, but they still got to get through the water resource argument. And of course, the St. John's Water Management District gets involved in that. But still, you know, there are still vague rules and procedures that they have to check to go through the approval for this data center. But then you get into the land use piece of it and all of that. Okay. So there's a lot of hurdles that have to be jumped through. And of course, they're sitting here today. This is the final vote today. We're going to know this probably this afternoon, or we might know it now. I mean, if you were to go out and check all your local news sources, they may be reporting on the results of this hearing already. Although I would expect the hearing to be lengthy, because I know I'm expecting a lot of local people to turn up for this hearing and fill out speaker cards so they can oppose the approval of this data center. Chuck, what do you think?
Well, I agree also that, quite frankly, there should be a lot of people uh, um, wanting to speak to this issue. You mentioned whether or not it would be, hooked up to the power grid, and somewhere along the line, I read that it certainly was going to be hooked up to the power grid. But the point they were trying to make is that, again, the excess electricity that it would create would go into the power grid, not necessarily take from it. When you're talking about thousands upon thousands of homes, that much electricity required for the AI facility, it's hard to imagine it creating excess. But the
Chuck,
reality is,
I'm not convinced that this particular data center agreed to build its own power generation facilities, because I'm reading through this stuff and I'm not seeing that. So this
yeah,
thing came in below the radar before the state of Florida passed SB 484. And keep in mind, this application's been in the pipeline for a couple of years. So this is what spawned 484 and the legislative concern over data centers. So I'm not convinced that they're going to produce their own energy. So we'll have to look into that a little deeper, because again, I learned about this yesterday, and because you and I had already covered 484 in a previous broadcast, I thought, particularly with this right in our backyard, we're in Lake County. Polk County is the immediate county just to the south of us, and we've got lots of colleagues down there. So we know a lot of people. I did business in Polk County for 30 years, since the north part of northeastern Polk County was developed. So I know a lot of people in Polk County. My bookkeeper lives down in Polk County, and many of my past employees and real estate agents and stuff like that are down there. That's where I made my living for a very long time. So I'm not, and that's just adds to my passion for this project, or in opposition to this project. But I think that Florida would be wise to just get out of the data center business. Let them do it somewhere else, Chuck.
yeah. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be our decision on this. But yeah, the reality is we're not even confident right now that the governor has signed this 44 into law. And I mean, I haven't seen anything to that effect anyway. So yeah, the real question is, what is this AI center? What kind of rules is this AI center going to be manufactured and work under? Because there's nothing previous to 484 that puts any major restrictions on them, other than, I guess, the whole county. The county legislature they're the ones that are going to make the decision on this.
It's the city, Chuck.
The city.
It's not the county, it's the city.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
So another piece of the puzzle, Chuck, is that locals are asking the city council if this data center is owned by foreign entities. And the city council is exercising their confidentiality agreement with the developer, and they refuse to answer the question. Another big problem.
Yeah. You said they refused to answer the question.
Yeah, they're saying that we have a confidentiality agreement with the developer, and we can't answer that question. So this thing could be owned by, foreign companies. And SB 484 goes through and defines, what is a foreign country and what is a foreign entity. And it gets into, major stockholders. If you control, 25% of the vote, then you're a major, then, you qualify, and this and that. So SB 484 attempts to protect the state of Florida from foreign countries owning data centers in our state. But of course, we have to go into the assumption, I guess, for a moment. Number one, that this application, this land use change application, came in before SB 484 was even filed. So they may have rights prior to. And then even if this was filed, even if SB 484 is passed and signed into law by the governor, it doesn't take effect until July 1 of, I think, 2026. It could be 2027. So, they're sliding under the radar. And believe me, they know that. That is all in their calculus, Chuck.
Yeah, it's July 1 of 2026.
There you go. So yeah, I think it's a big deal. And let's pray that that city council denies this request for a land use change and kills this data center in Fort Meade. That's my personal feeling. If I was on the city council there, I'd be a no vote.
Let me see
And that
if
would make a $2.6 billion project developer really unhappy with me, wouldn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. So you know what, Chuck? This is where faith comes into the whole program. You know, we're at a crossroads in this world, Chuck, with all that's going on in Iran. This data center represents transhumanism, is another component of this argument, which we haven't even touched on. I mean, this is just the development of this world. And I'm a firm believer. I'm old, Chuck. And
Yeah.
I've been around long enough to know that you don't put the genie back in the bottle. This
Right.
technology is out there and it's going to be sown into the world. But boy, I'm telling you, we have to have guardrails on it. We have to have legislative guardrails on it. And of course, you know that at the federal level, a lot of all the tech companies like these guys are saying that we need a national federal law to address data centers, big tech, et cetera, because it's just too cumbersome for these oligarchs to navigate the various rules in states. Okay. I disagree. I think that the states should certainly have jurisdiction. Again, it's a land use issue in addition to some other things, but I believe that it's very reasonable that these oligarchs deal with the states individually instead of having one federal dominant law dealing with, because there's so many areas of technology, not just the data centers, but other areas of technology that we're dealing with on a daily basis right now, current issues that are going, that we're addressing right now. And I'm very comfortable with allowing the states to put up their own statutory position on data centers and technology, Chuck.
Right. Well, I've been kind of looking around Facebook for anything new and haven't really found anything. Not that I'm that uh, excellent, but 23 hours ago is the, let's see, 12 hours ago, not something else. Um, okay, well, I can't really come up with anything. That would tell
Facebook is
us,
not where to look. Okay. Again,
well,
I tell you something, the hottest thing in the world, if you want to keep up with minute by minute breaking news, you've got to go be on X. That's where everything hits. I mean, before you can pick it up on any of the podcasts, anything like that, people break news on X. So then you've got to be watching. And of course, it depends on who you follow on X and stuff like that, depending on what pops up in your feed. But, when you're following the right people on X based on the subject matter you're concerned about, and you can certainly miss things because, the subject matter changes. But if you want to find news, you got to look on X. That's where everything breaks, is on X, Chuck.
yeah, well, I was looking elsewhere too, but I hadn't gotten that far. We're just about
I got
done
it.
here
Yeah, it's
this
okay. I
morning
think we've
anyway,
got,
but
yep, good.
um, so, well, why don't you give us some final thoughts, Mike?
Chuck, I think I've already expressed pretty much that number one, just based on the power consumption, the water consumption of those are my biggest concerns. I don't want to see data centers coming into Florida and sucking up mostly our water resource. As long as they're willing to build their own energy generation plants, I'm probably going to be okay with that. But water is a major concern for me with these data centers. And then just the absolute land consumption is another big concern for me. So I think that these data centers need to be in very remote locations. And I would suggest the entire state of Florida is under hyper development right now. So I would, if I was the governor of the state of Florida, I would be moving in the direction of putting data centers off limits in Florida. Chuck.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike Levine, and thank you all again for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.